You are listening to WTUZ Radio Podcas. Welcome to WTUZ Radio Podcas. I am your host, Rhonda. Okay, so today's topic, very, very interesting. We are going to talk about the Stewarts. Hence, King James Stewart, that bloodline. Now, how this particular podcast, the inspiration for this podcast came about, I was minding my business, which I try to do that. So down my timeline, I see where a family member post a get-together in Chicago at Seward Park. And I immediately said, wow, okay? Because I understand that the Seward name is a derivative of Stewart. Now, the interesting thing about it, this particular park is located in the neighborhood of Cabrini Green. So anyone from Chicago, you know what Cabrini Green is. It's an infamous low-income housing project that has since been dismantled. Anyone that's grew up in Chicago, or if you've lived in Cabrini, you pretty much know a lot of those families from back in the day that lived there were migration from the South. Okay, so including my family. Okay, so that first generation going into the projects were a lot of transplants coming from the South up north to work. Okay, so I just found that fascinating that this particular park, which is really a Stewart relative, was by a housing project. So, of course, I needed to validate, was the Seward / Stewart Park around when my family lived in Cabrini. So reach out to my dad. Dad, you remember Seward Park? Yeah. Your aunt and I used to go there back in da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, okay. I kind of figured you did. I just wanted to validate and make sure because I wanted to see how long it's been around. And apparently it's been around a while because that was back before I was even thought about that him and my aunt, rest in power to my auntie, was going to that park. So here's the park, Seward William Park, the location, all of that jazz, you know. And those of you that have been to this park, you probably are reminiscing on it. Little fountain. I'm like, oh, wow, this, I don't know how it looked back in the day, but it looks nice now. Okay. Here is who they're saying this park is dedicated to. Not saying that they dedicated the park to, but we're going to get into how he is really a Stewart and how it was whitewashed. Okay. Okay. But before I go there, I do want to, because I just did a quick check. I was like, wait a minute. If they have this park in Chicago, how many other parks do they have named after Seward? And then I just checked and I found all of these other different parks. Okay, so You see the first one, Alaska, Nebraska. I'm sorry, that's Arkansas. Arkansas, Nebraska, Alaska, Seattle. So there were quite a few. And even New York, even NYC. Right? So you New Yorkers, get ready. This finna be interesting. So Alaska, I just wanted to see, dang, Alaska too. So beautiful park in Alaska. Very, very pretty. Okay. And literally it is named Seward. Oh, that was Alaska. Okay. Anyway, because Arkansas is AR. My bad. So Seward, Alaska. So literally this area is named after the Stewarts ultimately. And I even think there is a Ross Island out in Alaska by the Arctic. And we're going to talk about how that all ties into the Stewarts. So let's get to William Seward. Let's get into the biography, the official biography they're giving. So it goes, and of course you can see this is from the history.state.gov, biographies of the Secretary of State William Henry Seward. William Henry Seward was appointed Secretary of State by Abraham Lincoln. Okay. Melanated man. Go check out Curimio's video on Abraham Lincoln. Shout out to Curimio or Curimeo. He did an excellent job bringing all of the receipts, firsthand accounts on Lincoln's complexion. He was a melanated man. Okay. So remember, William Henry Seward was appointed Secretary of State by Abraham Lincoln on March 5th, 1861, and served until March 4th, 1869. Seward carefully managed international affairs during the Civil War and also, see, I should have read this before, but a lot of times I purposely don't because I like to be surprised as well. Child, you mean to tell me he purchased in 1867 Alaska? Well, that would explain Seward, Alaska being named after him. Rise to prominence. Seward was born in Florida, New York on May 16, 1801. He graduated from Union College in Schenectady, New York in 1820. He won a seat in the state senate in 1830 and served as governor from 1838 to 1840. In 1849, Seward was elected to the U.S. Senate, where became a leading anti-slavery politician. Seward was the front runner for the Republican presidential nomination in 1860, but his anti-slavery speeches caused some party members to view him as too radical to win over the swing voters in critical states. The party instead settled on the more moderate Abraham Lincoln, whose victory in the general election precipitated the secession of the South and the formation of the Confederate States of America. This is interesting stuff. Seward became involved in negotiations between, northern and southern political leaders to resolve the crisis, while also privately accepting Lincoln's offer to be Secretary of State in the incoming administration on December 28, 1860. Influence on American diplomacy. Along with other political leaders, Seward unsuccessfully negotiated to resolve the succession crisis during the winter of 1861. Once in Lincoln's cabinet, Seward anticipated that he would yield a strong influence over foreign policy. However, he underestimated Lincoln's interest in foreign affairs. Although Seward was willing to consider war against European powers should they prove too friendly towards the Confederacy, Lincoln overruled Seward on this point. Okay, so I want y'all to remember what we're going over. This is really, 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 really interesting. But we'll get there. I'm getting there. Seward thus focused most of his effort on preventing foreign recognition of the Confederacy. Seward sent U.S. agents to Europe to publicly lobby for the Union cause, but early in his tenure, a diplomatic crisis arose when the U.S. Navy arrested Confederate envoys headed for Europe. Okay, and there were melanated, aka black Confederate soldiers. Okay. I did a drop on it. You can go in the video archives and check. I'll also leave a link. And I got my information from another channel that did an outstanding job providing the necessary sources proving that the Confederation had black soldiers. Not only did the Confederation have black soldiers, Robert E. Lee was black. Okay? So I want you all to start putting these dots together. Seward is Stewart. Stewart is black. So we're still talking about black on black rulership, black on black fighting for territories, land. Okay? So meaning the takeover of the Americas was by black European men. Okay? But let's continue. We'll get to how Seward is really Stewart, which William Seward was black. Despite public support in favor of their detention, Seward agreed to release the envoys to avoid the threat of war with Great Britain. Seward also faced difficulties in encouraging foreign governments to curtail the smuggling of goods and war material, as well as the construction of Confederate warships. Seward worked with the U.S. Ministry in London, Charles Francis Adams, to put an end to the building of these ships. The British government failed to prevent the launch of the CSS Alabama and CSS Florida, but the subsequent embarrassment caused officials to more strictly enforce British neutrality and prevented the building of further Confederate ships on British soil. After the Civil War ended with a Union victory, Seward pursued negotiations to expand U.S. territory. So again, we are talking melanated men that were making these moves. Specifically, we are talking about melanated, aka black European men making these moves, because they held the seat of power at Europe at the time. a melanated man, aka black man, James Stewart, King James, was the one that initiated the 13 original colonies in the Americas. And this Seward name is a derivative of Steward. So it is the same exact bloodline. Do you understand the connections? So here you have a steward that is negotiating expanding U.S. territory. Just like you had a steward in the 1600s that established the 13 colonies in the Americas. But let's continue. He resumed discussions to purchase Russian Alaska, which resulted in the 1867 Alaska Purchase. Seward also attempted unsuccessfully to acquire territory elsewhere, as negotiations to acquire the Virgin Islands, part of the Dominican Republic, as well as several other small islands in the Caribbean failed. However, the U.S. Navy occupied Midway Atoll in 1867. All right. So he purchased Alaska, but was trying to get the Caribbeans, which all of this is still America. Seward also involved the United States in Mexican affairs from 1865 to 1867 by supporting the anti-French forces in defeating Australian Archduke Maximilian, whom the French had installed as Emperor of Mexico in 1862. So a steward going up against the French. Seward continued to serve as Secretary of State under Lincoln's successor, Andrew Johnson. As a Republican moderate, however, Seward found himself at odds with Johnson and other conservatives in the cabinet, while radicals in Congress distrusted him for his continued loyalty to Johnson. Despite congressional hostility towards Seward, Congress still approved the purchase of Alaska. Okay, so you see, again, this is from history.state.gov, and this is the biography of Secretaries of State William Henry Seward. Okay, let's get into another connection. Here's where we're about to make these connects. All right. This is from Renee Atour, New York State Network to Freedom, William Seward and Harriet Tubman statue. We're going to tie him into the bloodline just a second. I'm getting there. So I'm just providing additional connections. So I'm not going to read through all of this for the sake of time. But this person was saying that I was particularly interested in seeing the recently installed William Seward and Harriet Tubman statue and the African American ancestral burial grounds within the cemetery. Okay. So they dedicated the William Seward and Harriet Tubman statue on May 17, 2019 at the corner of the Clinton Library and Liberty Street. Child, we can't make this stuff up. We can't make it up, okay? So I'm not going to read through this just really quick. They're telling the ties that both Tubman and Seward had to Scanati. I know I'm not pronouncing that right, New Yorkers. How they tie to this area. Tubman is known to have come through that area after famed Charles Nellie rescue in Troy. Seward attended Union College. Yeah. I'm not going to go through all this. What I'm trying to get to is Tubman and Seward had a relationship based in their mutual fight against slavery. During the 1850s, Seward's home in Auburn, New York, served as an important stop on the Underground Railroad, with Seward's wife, Frances, actively engaging in the abolitionist network and hid freedom seekers in her basement. In 1859, Tubman purchased a 7-acre farmstead in Auburn from the Sewards, where she was based until her death in 1913. The relationship between them lasted until Frances and then William's death. During the Civil War, Frances provided shelter to Tubman's niece. Speculation that she may have been Tubman's daughter, Margaret Stewart, child clutching pearls. Wait a minute. What was the maybe daughter's name? Harriet Tubman's daughter's name? Margaret Stewart? Really now? Really now? Immediately after the war, William advocated that Tubman should receive a government pension for her service as a scout and a nurse in the U.S. Army. So let's get into it, okay? Thank you for this information website. I'm just loving on y'all big time, because you just dropped a jewel here that Seward gave possibly Harriet Tubman's daughter, Margaret Stewart, shelter. Okay, but although it says it was her niece, so either way, whether or not it's her niece or her daughter, don't matter. It's her family. You telling me her name was Margaret Stewart? So again, during the Civil War, Frances provided shelter to Tubman's niece. Speculation that it might have been her daughter, Margaret Stewart. Okay, let's get into the connect. Let's get into these sources. Shout out to Brother Lee Cummings. This is the Negro Question Part 6, the 13 Black Colonies. This is an excellent book, again, to have in your collection. I say it's a collector's item. Let's get to this portion of this book. And also, he's going to break down how King James Stewart set up the 13 Black colonies, and he's going to go into the specific colonies where the other Black kings were involved as well. Really excellent book, well researched. Let's get to the section on Harriet Tubman, because see, I would never have had this Seward surname in my mind had it not been for this particular information out of the Negro Question Part 6, the 13 Black Colonies by Brother Lee Cummings. So let's get to page 147. And on 147, he gives a ship manifest. And on this ship manifest, he has stewards and the Rosses on here. So he has John Stewart, William Henry Stewart, Catherine Stewart, Harriet Ann Stewart, William Henry Ross, Margaret Stewart, Anne Marie Stewart, Emily Millie Hollis Stewart, James Stewart, Benjamin Ross, Moses Ross, George Ross, Robert Ben Ross, Henry Stewart, Catherine Kane Stewart, John Isaac Ross Stewart. Okay? We know where the name Stewart comes from, out of the King James and them bloodline. The name Ross comes from a territory out of Europe. But in the book, he says, the parents of Harriet Tubman are Benjamin Ross Stewart and Harriet Ross Rita Stewart. So Harriet Tubman was a Stewart. Okay? Now, just a real quick flip to the genealogy chart. Oh, I thought I could blow this up. Yeah. Let me do it this way. Okay. Let's look for the Stewarts on the tree. You see them right here. They're under the house of Bruce. Okay. This is the house of Stewart. Here's the Ross. The Ross is coming off of Robert II. Okay? So if you are a Ross, you are a Stewart. Okay? So again, Harriet Tubman is Harriet Ross Stewart. Her parents, Benjamin Ross Stewart, Harriet Ross Rita Stewart, were on a ship manifest coming from Europe. Okay? All right. So he's pulled off from the ancient map of Scotland. That's where he found the Ross land area named after the Rosses. Okay? From an ancient map of Scotland. I went back on the timeline and pulled up the list of men, women, and children that Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart rescued from the South. Again, shout out to Brother Lee Cummings, The Negro Question, Part 6, The 13 Black Colonies. I cannot tell you how many times I've brought up this particular source, but it keeps being validated, what he's saying, over and over again. Okay, so Harriet Tubman Stewart Ross was rescuing folks from the South, right? So it says, I almost fell out my chair when I saw the last name Ross and Stewart on the list of rescued people. So let me back that up for what Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart was really doing. I went back on the timeline and I pulled up a list of men, women, and children that Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart rescued from the South. I almost fell out of my chair when I saw the last name Ross and Stewart on the list of rescued people. Then I took a look at Harriet Tubman's parents' names and I saw the names Ross and Stewart. I immediately ran to the map and saw Ross and Stewart in the Highlands of Scotland. Okay. I reread the writings of the European witnesses, and he breaks down the sources again, referring you back into this book on those eye account witnesses of the Stewarts and the Stewarts particularly. Them being black, aka melanated. The Stewarts on the ship's manifest are black. The stewards on the ship's manifest are black. The images of the Stewart kings are black, and the stewards that Harriet Tubman rescued from the South were black. Are you smarter than the fifth grade? All right. The math says that the black stewards and that Harriet Tubman rescued from the South were in fact the seed of King James Stewart. What was Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart really doing in the South? This woman was rescuing the royal seed of the kings called Stewart. The seed of the black Highlanders, plain and simple. Ross was one of the titles that the kings of the Stewart held in Scotland. Okay? All right, so just as a reminder, we'll bring this back up. Bringing up the lineage of the Stewarts. And you're going to see they're out of the house of Bruce. Okay, which Robert the Bruce started this. Here is the Stewart branch. Okay. And then you see Robert II, and then you see the Earl of Ross. So if you're looking at this Ross name, you're looking at Stewarts. Okay. All right. So back to Brother Lee Cummings. All right. So what else? Okay. All right. Trying to see what else I want to get to. Okay. All right. Here we go. The plot thickens when Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart rescues a black man from slavery named William Henry Stewart. Again, I just want to tell you what I am reading from. The Negro Question, Part 6, The 13 Black Colonies by Lee Cummings. I'm on page 147. I started. You're going to see the ship manifest with the Stewarts. And on that ship manifest, you have Harriet Tubman's parents, which are Ross Stewarts. On page 148 at the bottom, the plot thickens when Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart rescued a black man from slavery named William Henry Stewart. Okay? It is important to note that this man's lineal name appears on different ship manifests as a political prisoner. Okay? Now that was explosive enough, baby, because let me tell you something. I clutched pearls when I first read that. But it gets better. It gets better. Shout out to Brother Lee Cummings, because everything that you documented, that's why can't nobody come back and dispute what you said. Because you have the receipts to back it up. It gets better. Here we go. Here's where this Seward name comes into play. The name William Stewart can be found on the convict ship Hocking Hill and the ship York. This simply proves that the Stewart royals were being rounded up and deported into the colonies as convicts. What was their crime? They believed in the divine right of kings to rule, and they tried to restore the black stewards to the throne of the three kingdoms. Are you still there? Let's play the game conspiracy theory. What are the odds that the same name, William Henry Seward, appears as the Secretary of State in the administration of Abraham Lincoln? Think about this. Harriet Tubman Stewart, and I'm just going to throw in there, Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart, rescues a man with the name William Henry Stewart in 1854, and 11 years later, this same name appears as the Secretary of State of the United States minus the T. What are the odds? So just to recap, William Henry Stewart appears on the ship Manifest, being exiled from Europe. Harriet Tubman, a well-known abolitionist, to this day gets credit as an abolitionist. Parents are on the same said ship. And she is a Ross Stewart. Okay? And then she just so happens to rescue a Henry Stewart out of quote, quote, slavery / servitude. And then in Lincoln's cabinet, a William Henry Seward becomes the Secretary of State. Let's continue. That the same day that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, the entire family of black stewards / Sewards was savagely attacked by an assassin by the name of Lewis Powell, a 20-year-old Confederate soldier. Powell / Secretary of State William Henry Seward, Assistant Secretary of State Frederick Augustus Seward Stewart, and his daughter, but they all lived. It was a hit on the entire administration. There is another intriguing element to this story that cannot be dismissed. When Harriet Ross Tubman and her family made it to Canada, they dropped the last name Ross, which Earl. I'm telling you, Lee Cummings is on his stuff. They dropped the Earl name, okay, and assumed the title of Stewart King. So, wait a minute. Clutch pearls, clutch pearls. So you mean to tell me that when Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart family made it over to Canada, they put down the title of Ross and went to Stewart? Oh, okay then. Okay. This can't be a coincidence. No, it cannot. Check out the names James Stewart, William Henry Stewart, and Henry. The evidence points to Harriet Tubman Stewart and her family being the royal seed of King James Stewart. This means that Harriet Tubman Stewart and her family are direct descendants of Prince Zara of the House of Judah. All right, that's something different. All right, that part. I'm not a Bible person, so I can't get into that. All right. Okay, so just to recap, William Henry Seward is William Henry Stewart, the same William Henry Stewart that was exiled out of Europe, that showed up on a ship manifest, that coincidentally, and it ain't really no coincidence, that Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart wind up rescuing a William Henry Seward, which is really Stewart. And he winds up being Secretary of State. Okay? And as we read through his biography, William Henry Stewart, because that's what he is, he's a steward, we saw that, he was out purchasing up land or expanding the what we now call the United States, but the Americas. So he was part of the Alaska Purchase. There is also a Ross Island in Antarctica. Go look it up. Okay? So that Ross Island represents a steward. It's named after a steward. Okay? So, let me see what's the other one I wanted to get to. How I likes to do. I said, let's get into these genealogy records. So, I simply went and looked up Frances Seward. Okay, this is William Henry Seward's wife, because I wanted to see what race they had listed on here. Okay. Look what happened, fam. Why is this column blank with race? Why is it blank? But when I hover over it, it says white. Now, I've gone back in my own family genealogy records. Color wasn't blank. Wasn't blank. So why is it blank on Frances W. Seward, which she's really a steward? But when I hover over it, it says white. But if you think I'm making it up, Rhonda, you being a conspiracy theorist, down here, I just busted y'all. Because you have black down here. But here you put white. So somebody's been going through fudging the steward's records. Okay? So again, just as a recap, just for grins, I just pulled up William Henry Stewart's / Seward's wife. I didn't even get to him. I just pulled her up. I didn't get to him because Lee Cummings did that work. I just for grins pulled her up. Her race is listed as blank. But when I hover over it, it says white. But just to cross-reference, what was the pattern in this particular census record, I got some black in here, but it looks like, but if I go up here with this same slash, that says white, but down here they have the same slash, but it's black, black again, white, 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 white. But when I go up here, it's not, the race isn't filled in. but yet ancestry said white. And I'm only pointing this out because we found a source, and I'll drop that link to that video also, how the Stewarts were purposely whitewashed out of history. It was ordered that their race be changed to white. Okay? So again, just wanted to bring this to you all's attention. The connection of these Black Europeans connected to these Black kingdoms and empire in Europe, which are the original colonizers of the Americas. And specifically, William Henry Seward, who was the Secretary of State serving under President Lincoln. He was a Black man and he was a Stewart. Okay? And his relative is Harriet Tubman. Their family. Harriet Tubman, Ross Stewart, and William Henry Stewart, their family. That is why they're connected. Okay? So just another little thing I wanted to bring to you all. My family member don't even realize what they put there. I'm like, whoa, wow. So when you see this surname, Seward, that's really just a derivative of Stewart. Okay, because remember, they were exiled. All right. So it was switching of surnames, switching it up a little bit. So Seward is Stewart, and these were Black folk at the end of the day. And Harriet Tubman is a Stewart. Harriet Tubman Ross is a Stewart. Okay? She ran with Stewart's name. Her niece was able to live with Seward, William Henry Seward, which is really William Henry Stewart. Was it in this one? Child, I forgot if it was in this one or not. Nonetheless, she was able to live with the Stewarts, and the niece's name is Margaret Stewart. Here we go. So the relationship between them lasted until Frances and then William's death. Frances, remember, is William Henry Stewart's wife. During the Civil War, Frances provided shelter to Tubman's niece, Margaret Stewart. I straight can't make that up. Cannot make it up. Let's just real quick and see if they show a Margaret Stewart on, because, I told y'all to pay attention because, yeah, right there go Margaret's name. And I know that's not the same Margaret, but what I'm showing you is how the first names also carry over because people keep naming their children after relatives. So you see within the Stewart line, this is Margaret right there. Margaret right there. Marjorie. There's Margaret right there. Margaret right there. Margaret right there. Margaret right there. Okay. So I'm just showing you how that Margaret name is very well used in that Stewart bloodline. So Margaret Stewart, Harriet Tubman's niece, black, right? Black, aka melanated, right? Was housed by William Henry Seward, black. All right? So the connection between William Henry Seward / Stewart and Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart, they are family. Okay? That's why they were tied together in all of those records. This is family. Okay? So all of the parks, all of the areas, things named with that surname Seward, now you know it is Stewart. Things with that Ross surname, that still is Stewart. Okay? So I hope you all got some value out of this. I know we've gone over this before, but it just deserved its own separate video to once again show how things were whitewashed and to show you how all of these historical folks that they are speaking on that quote, quote, built up America, that are the settlers, that are the early founding fathers, they are black folk that tie back to the black melanated European kingdoms. And they left plenty of evidence. You just have to know what you're looking at. Okay? So all that was done was that the race was swapped out. Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart, her race was not swapped out. Okay? So that's it for this. Shout out to Lee Cummings. Highly encourage you to pick up and read his book, The Negro Question, Part 6, The 13 Black Colonies. He's going to go into how the 13 Black Colonies was founded by a black man. And then you're going to get in the information also, the Harriet Tubman Ross Stewart connection. So if you are not subscribed to us, I highly encourage you to subscribe, like this video, and share. I wish everyone well on this Friday. This is Rhonda with WTUZ Radio Podcast. Peace and love, family.